All right, welcome. Thanks for joining us. My name's Jonathan Fisher. I'm here from the Bothan Network. I'm here with Lego Pizza Ian and Wait Wait Don't Kill Me Jeff. We're going to talk about Anakin Blue. How's it going, Ian?
It's going really well, man. Hot off the presses here with this really awesome Anakin deck that Jeff whipped up. I was lucky enough to be able to attend SCG Con Columbus and did pretty well with this. And my one buddy Chris also did really well with it as well.
Yeah, so you top aided twice, right?
Yeah, so I top eighted Saturday, lost in top eight, and then I top foured Sunday. And then my buddy Chris top eighted both Friday and Sunday as well.
And then Jeff, welcome. Jeff, people might not know since Ian is piloting it, but behind the scenes in our testing, you designed this deck.
Yeah, this has been my kind of pet deck all through set three. Ever since I did a pre-release with Anakin, I've been working really hard on this deck. I like it a lot, and I'm super excited to dive into it.
Yeah, so Jeff has a slideshow here. We're going to go through it. I think he's ready to have some fun with that. Jeff, I'm just
Oh
going to
yeah,
let you dive right in. Let's go.
Oh,
sounds
wait, hold
good.
on, real quick before we move on from this slide.
Mm-hmm.
The deck name is not Anakin Blue. The deck name is Johnny Bravado, and we will understand why that is the name as we go.
Absolutely. And I also want to give a quick apology to all the viewers out there. This video would have gone out sooner, but Ian selfishly decided that he needed to sleep
That's
after two
true.
full day tournaments and 14 hours of driving, so we had to record this the next day. So apologies, blame Ian. Unbelievable, unbelievable.
Yeah, I can take it. Don't worry.
Yeah, so ready to dive on in. So want to go through the bluff, as my corporate friends used to say. The bottom line up front. What are we doing with this deck on the leader unit side and the leader side himself? So the way that I like to think about Anakin as a leader is, what if Han 2 killed you in 2 attacks? Because that's kind of the baseline of what this deck wants to do. Is you are red blue hero mid range with all the same tools and toys, except your leader murders everyone, and it's awesome. So it makes it a lot of fun to play. And then on the actual leader side, he really allows you to win the trade war. You get to deal 2 damage to your base to buff up your attacking unit. And I'll go through another slide in a second about what I mean by winning the trade war. So if we want to run through some examples of what that means, let's look at the key performance indicator of the trade war and what I'm saying. We're going to trade up here with big numbers. If we have a red 3 out, for example, and we use Anakin action on a Sabine unit, that Sabine unit attacks for 6 damage and makes Han leader die. That's crazy.
Yeah, as a Han 1 player from set 2, you did
Yeah,
that. You did that in testing, and I wanted to throw my deck out the window.
it was amazing. It was great. And the same thing, if you have an A-wing with the red 3 out and use the Anakin ability, it attacks for 6, which is enough to have your 2-drop kill a Fet's Fire Spray. So you really are forcing the opponent to think differently about how they have to trade and how they have to respect your units, or you get to dictate the entire board state, which is awesome.
Okay, so red 3, it helps
Yeah,
us line up with that critical 6 health with a lot of our 2 drops. Is that what we're looking at there?
exactly.
So that's red 3, but I mean, we're not always going to have red 3.
Yeah, there are other numbers in general, and I get through that in some of the specific examples where there are basically key breakpoints that you want to get. So if you right now in the current meta, 5 health units are really big because people want to
Yeah.
avoid the ISB agent ping plus Tarkin Town from Django. Like if you look at
Yep.
the Mono Han list from SCG Columbus, they were running Liberated Slaves as a generic 3/5 because they could play it on turn 1 and it lived. But if we have any 3 attack unit, we can attack in and kill that. We can attack in and kill a tech or a DJ because we can, any 3 power unit lets us kill a 5 health unit on the ground, which is super helpful. Um,
Okay.
so you don't just need red 3, but red 3 really exacerbates what this deck is doing and lets you trade up even more, where your 2-drop is taking out 6 drops all of a sudden.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And when you talk about trading up, I'm thinking of two things. Let me know if you're thinking something else as well. One
Hmm.
is we trade into something and our unit lives. So we had
Hmm.
enough toughness to survive the attack. We took something out. And the other is I've got something that's lower cost. I invested in it last turn, and I'm going to take something out that they're deploying this turn. So
Exactly.
is there anything else we're thinking about there? Like,
Those are the main things. I look at it in terms of total resources spent, which is another comparison to the Han 2 deck. The Han 2 deck says, "Hey, I'm going to play a Luke Skywalker for 6 resources," and they are trading up in that they spend 6 resources on what should be 7. We are trading up in that we spend 2 resources and we take out something that they spent 4, 5, 6 resources on. So we get to trade up in the sense that our smaller units kill their bigger units, and we have more freed up resources to do other things that we want to do.
Yeah, I can give a good example of this too, and just kind of like
yeah,
the threat of activation of Anakin is going to make your opponents play either off curve or like in unoptimally. And an example of this is, let's say you don't have initiative. If you have initiative, it's a lot easier because you'll have the first action on turn 2 if you want to like get a free trade into a unit. But if you don't have initiative, one of the things that you can do is like, let's say you're playing against like, I don't know, like just a generic like villain bounty hunter deck, right? And they go like turn 1 crafty smuggler, you go, they have initiative, and then you go turn 1 Sabine unit. On turn 2, they have the option of like attacking with their crafty smuggler. A lot of times they're going to hit base, sometimes they'll hit into your Sabine unit so that there's some damage on it. Well, you can just play a 3-drop and not attack with your Sabine unit, and now you're hostage their mana. So if they want to play Toro, they're just going to lose the Toro right away, right? Because your Sabine unit with Anakin's activation can just kill the Toro on site. And usually the playing like a 3/5, even like a Boba unit, right? Another 3/5, like that's just another unit that like usually on the 3 resource turn is a safe play for a lot of decks to make, because there's not a lot of things that can defeat that right away. But because you have the ability to use Anakin's activation in kind of multiple different ways, right? Like they're threatened on their 2-drop if you have like a value trade there, but then if you just don't attack with that unit and play something or use your mana in some way, now you're hostage their mana for the next action, and if they ever pass, you get to just claim and they didn't do anything, right? And you got to deploy your 3-drop. So you're developing board, they don't get to develop board. And then if they do try to develop your board, you get to trade into it with your 2-drop. Now you're left with a 3-drop and they have maybe a 2-drop left over. So now you're up on that value train.
Yep, exactly.
Let's appease the FFG overlords and use resources.
Okay.
Mana.
It's
yeah,
hard. It's hard
we're coming
for
from
old,
so
old
many
gamers
different
to learn
games.
new tricks.
Yeah, but I think
I'm so bad at noticing that I even do that.
Yeah, you mentioned threat of activation. I think as new pilots, people taking on this deck, they need to. I think you want to be thinking about that the whole time. How is your opponent respecting your board? Because you can activate Anakin, you don't have to activate it.
Yeah,
it really
it's really
flips the
really
game
important.
around. Because standard game theory that people did in set 1. Obviously, there were certain cards and decks that changed this, but standard deck theory was, oh, I want to attack with my unit first because they might have removal or they might have whatever. But with a deck like this, you're actively saying, play a unit, and I'm going to trade my 2-drop into it. If you're going to spend your 3 resource turn killing my 2-drop, then I play a 3-drop and you still didn't play a 3-drop. So that's basically the same thing. I'm either going to trade my 2-drop for your 3-cost removal spell or for your 3-cost unit. But this 2 is trading for your 3. And so by leaving it up, you're forcing you're forcing their hand to play what would otherwise be considered suboptimally, to try to play around what you can do with this extra 2 damage, this extra 2 attack on a unit.
Let's continue through your slides. Let's see what else you got for us.
Yeah. So next we're going to meet the team. Side note here, when I was building this PowerPoint, Google Slides recommended to me a corporate investment pitch theme, and I just rolled with it. So now we're going to meet the team. First step of the team is the upgrade package. This is where I start every version of this deck that I've ever made. Is you start with 3 Jedi Lightsabers, 3 Perilous Positions, and 2 Razor Crests. I think you need this whole package in every version of this deck, and I'll go into some more reasons why later. But Ian, do you want to talk a little bit about how some of these cards performed?
Yes, I mean, they were all amazing. I was such a hater on this Razor Crest. Like when I saw Jeff's list, I think the exact words that I texted you was, "Are you sure about Razor Crest? I'm pretty sure that card is unplayable."
I'm pretty sure I defended Razor Crest against the entire team at one point, and I said, no, just let me play it. Just see how it works. Just see it play out.
And then I saw you play a game where you played like 4 or 5 perilous positions, and I was just like, all right, I'm sold. I'm sold.
Yep.
I don't need to.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's where the power comes in, understanding
Mhm.
how strong Perilous Position is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I don't think Razor Crest is worth it when you just have the lightsaber, and that's why Razor Crest wasn't worth it last set in really any deck, because you didn't have the versatility of upgrades. But now we have what I consider potentially the best card in set 3 in Perilous Position. Definitely the best removal spell, and you just get to play it whenever you want because you know you can get it back. And the fact that it exhausts and gives -2/-2, you can save yourself so much damage time after time. And the fact that you also have Razor Crest with Jedi Lightsaber means it's totally fine to throw a Jedi Lightsaber on your turn 1 Sabine play, and then when they kill it, you say, okay, I'll just get it back and have it ready for Anakin flip turn. So it makes what used to be 2-for-1s, which was the downside of playing, lightsabers on your
Yeah.
turn 1 plays. Those aren't 2-for-1s anymore because you just get the lightsaber back.
Yeah. And the other great thing too is like because you have cards like Red 3 in the deck, like the Razor Crest becomes an actual threat because then that card's also another card that can like kill a Ruthless Raider or kill a Fire Spray. I played against the Yellow Palp in the top 4 of Sunday, and I had a Red 3 out, a Razor Crest, and I think it was a Restored Arc, and he devastated and killed my Anakin, and then I was able to like trade in the following turn using my like Razor Crest with activation to like do 7 damage to it, and then the 3 damage left over from the Restored Arc to kill a Devastator, which was like that wasn't on my bingo card, but like
Yeah,
it
Razor Crest
was.
killing Devastator is that might have been a first in SWU history.
Yeah, it was pretty gross. I ended up losing that game anyways, but it was still like the power of the card on its own, like getting back, like the when played is very very good. But there are times where I've played this card just because I needed a 4-drop in space. It has
Yeah.
restore. Anakin's ability is really good with it because you actually don't lose any life because the way Anakin, even if you're at 0 damage on base, the way that the game or the action on Anakin works is that as a requirement cost of the action, you have to take 2 damage. So the attack with the Razor Crest will always restore you that 2. And that's the
Exactly.
same
Yeah.
with like any restore unit in the
I
deck.
love restore units in this deck for that reason. It really helps the versatility of the deck, where you can trade up and still not be too you still not go too high on your life total on the
Yeah.
damage on your base.
Yeah, and just to reiterate on the Perilous Position being like one of the best cards in the set, if not the best, it's definitely top 3 for me. Like this card has continually impressed me every time I've played it. It just does so much. I think the way that people should be looking at this card, because it looks very simple. It looks like a card that we've already had. Like Make an Opening is a card that already exists. It does -2 for 3 cost. It also heals you, right? So like, oh, why would I play this? It doesn't heal me. The exhaust on this card is half the reason that you're playing this, if not like
Yeah.
80% of the reason that you're playing it,
100%.
because it exhausts leaders. And as most people know, most decks in SWU are built around their leader, and being able to interrupt the opponent's game plan with their leader is a crucial way that you can put yourself in a position to win a game. For example, Han Yellow, like that deck relies on getting to 7 mana on the Han flip turn, and you can interrupt that very consistently by using Perilous Position. Um, Not only that, but it's a color pie break in my opinion. Like blue does not have an exhaust effect like this, and this is a blue neutral card. So not even just blue hero decks can play this. Like blue villain decks should be playing this card as a 3 of. Like I think it is just a staple in the format to come because
Yeah.
it is just so efficient at doing its job, and because
That's a
it's
good
so
point. I think
cheap.
this is the only non-yellow exhaust card in the game.
No, there's a blue
Is it?
card that costs 1, and it rescues a captured unit and exhausts it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, but that's so specific, right? Like it has to be specifically a captured unit or like
No, it
a
exhausts
bounty
any
guy,
unit,
right?
costs 1, and if it has a bounty, it rescues it. But yeah,
All right. Well,
let's
no
see
one
the.
plays that card, so
Hey, I've played it. I've played it. Let's go to removal. Let's see the rest of this slide.
Yeah. So this is pretty standard to any blue-red hero deck, where one of the best things about that color combination is the variety of removal that you get. I really want to make sure people don't sleep on Daring Raid. The fact that it only costs one resource, it's really good as a curve filler, shield breaker. The fact that it can hit base or units, it can cross lanes, hit space units. The versatility of Daring Raid for only one resource is huge. And then the same thing with Force Throw and all the Force units. You can play it just to discard a card out of their hand, or you can Force Throw yourself to discard your Luke unit to deal 7 damage to something. The versatility in blue red removal is nice, and it's flexible to the meta. So if you need more Rivals Falls, you play more Rivals Falls. If you need Fell the Dragon, you play those. You there's a set number of cards in your deck that you can say these cards are going to be my removal cards, and I pick which ones I think are best for the meta.
Yeah, I mean, all of these cards pretty much overperformed. The only one that was like kind of weak for me this weekend was Takedown, but there was a couple times where it was absolutely phenomenal, and I would have lost a game if not for it. And that was against, I was playing like a Django 30 HP deck where he was playing like a bounty hunter package, so it wasn't like a space deck, but he was playing like every bounty hunter imaginable and relentless pursuits. So he would like relentless pursuit, steal my Yoda, and put it under like a Boba unit that now has a shield, and then I would just take down it and get my Yoda back, right? But the nice thing is that because we're playing perilous position, it does make takedown better. So a lot of times what'll end up happening is you can like on the 6 resource turn when you're deploying Anakin, you can like perilous position their leader, play Anakin, put a lightsaber on Anakin, attack into like a small unit or whatever, and then the following turn when you have 7 mana, you can like play another lightsaber and take down their leader or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of
That's
times
a line
the
that I've had a
takedown is
lot too. Is any 7 health unit, just perilous position and takedown. Either sometimes even on the same turn, although obviously that's a 2-for-1. But a lot of times it's just, hey, I'm gonna tap a unit down this turn and I'm gonna kill it next turn.
Yeah.
How often was Force Throw turned on for you, Ian, in your tournaments?
Force Throw was always on. I mean, we're running 3 Yoda, 2 Kanan, 2 Obi-Wan, 3 Lukes, and then Anakin himself. A lot of times, if I didn't have, I would always try to save it. Like, I rarely resourced it unless my opening 6 was very specific to what the game plan was, or if I was playing against a specific deck. I liked it a lot against the Django decks if I had Yoda, where I would try to go like turn 3, Yoda plus Force Throw, right? So you're at the 4 resource turn, and you pay 3 for the Yoda, and then you get the Force Throw them. They're trying to like Daring Raid that turn, so like they're getting down on cards. They're gonna get back up, but like they'll have a couple cards left, and a lot of times they'll have like another 3 or 6 there, so you get to like take out, their turn 3 play or something like that. It sometimes you can just play Yoda on the 3 resource turn and then followed up with first action Force Throw. But that's kind of like depending on initiative and stuff like that. And it also can help on the 5 resource turn if you like played a Kanan on 4 and then you have like another 4 you want to play like a Razor Crest or something like that. It's really a curve filler, and you have a lot of good units that will stick around to help you, kind of.
Yeah, I think people are just, when they see Force Throw, they get a little nervous about, is it actually going to be on? Am I going to have a Force unit? Is it just going to be sitting in my hand? Kind of like Rivals Fall costing 6. Am I going to be positioned to use that well? Is this going to be clogging my hand?
And one of the reasons, just piggybacking on what Ian was saying, one of the reasons I really like both Force Throw and Daring Raid is one of the common lines in this deck that I've done before is I'll say, okay, I've done it before, like turn 1 I'll play a Queel, turn 2 I'll put a lightsaber on him, and then he hits their base for 10 or 15 damage, and now I'm on the 5 resource turn, and I'll just play Razor Crest plus Daring Raid, and now I get back the lightsaber that they've spent 3 turns trying to kill, and they know that the lightsaber is sitting in my hand waiting for Anakin's flip next turn. And it's a beating, and you still get to use all your resources efficiently.
And one comment on Rivals Fall is that card's stocks are going to go up if this Anakin deck goes up, because it's easily the best way to deal with him on the flip turn. But people are still playing their Vanquishes for some reason. I
almost didn't put it in the slide because I don't want other people to play Rivals Falls. I want to be the only one that's playing Rivals Falls, but I figured for completeness sake, I should put it in the slide.
Yeah, I played a mirror against my buddy Chris on Saturday, and it was literally just who drew their Rivals Falls who won.
Yeah.
So let's see those threats, Jeff.
Yeah, so this is another one where it's kind of standard with your red-blue hero of you've got really good top end in the 5, 6, 7 range. Poe, Obi-Wan, and Luke, they're all incredibly helpful in one of the things that I like about them is that they overload your opponent's removal. I get into this a little bit more in the next slide, but I really like playing Poe on 5 just by himself. Usually, a lot of players that weren't playing Energy Conversion Lab stopped playing Poe because they said without ambush he's not that good. He just eats a removal spell, he eats whatever. Well, if I'm playing against someone and they start their 6 resource turn by rivals following my Poe, I'm pretty sure I've just won that game. You can't leave Anakin alone to hit you, and if they have to spend all this time and resources destroying your Poe, then your Anakin is just free to murder them, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I was another one of those. Hey Jeff, are we sure about this card? was Poe, because I was in the camp of this card doesn't do anything when you play it, and I just spent 5 resources for it to die. And soon after just playing a couple games with it, I realized that it's actually probably one of the better uh, resource 5 turns that we can do, because not only is it really good to just kind of catch stray removal from your opponent, but it's also removal if you ever untap, right? The threat of Poe attacking is always going to ruin your opponent's turn, the following turn, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And
even against a deck like Django, if you play Poe and then take initiative, are they going to flip their Django without killing your Poe? You just get to kill it on the first attack. Are they going to use their no good to me dead that they needed to save for Anakin to make sure your Poe doesn't untap? There's a lot of you're just putting your opponent in a very tough spot, which is what I like about this deck. Is we have a lot of questions and we need to make like they have to have the right answer at exactly the right time. And Poe is just another really big question to ask at the right time.
One of my favorite things that I would do, and I think I did this like 3 or 4 times. I would play I would like start the turn with initiative. I would play Poe, and I would just go crazy.
Yeah, you do whatever you're gonna do. My next turn's gonna be awesome.
All right, try your best. I believe you can do it. And then I would proceed to just either wreck them with the Poe and with the Anakin, or I would just wreck them with the Anakin if they dealt with the Poe.
Yeah.
It was, I think every single time I played that card, except for maybe one time, I think I won that game.
Nice.
All right, so let's keep going. You got space coming up next.
Yeah, the highest ground. Not Anakin's normal territory, but we get to control space, I think, very well with this deck. We've already talked a bit about the Razor Crest just being a beefy space unit. Obi-Wan's Aether Sprite is another one that I think can float between the main deck and sideboard depending on the meta. And if you have a space heavy meta, then you just run this in the main deck because it is so good at cleaning up space. With Anakin's activation, you can attack for Aether Sprite. We can attack with Aether Sprite for 6 and still deal 2 damage to a different space unit. So if your opponent's sitting there with, I don't know what deck would do this, but a Fet's Fire Spray and a P-38 Starfighter, you can just attack with Obi's Aether Sprite and kill both of them. Because you can attack into the Fire Spray for 6 and then have the 2 damage ping kill off a 2 health space unit at the same time in the same action. It's really good. Anakin's Interceptor is another one. We've been switching back and forth between Red 3 and Anakin's Interceptor, and that again really depends on the space meta, because Anakin's Interceptor is much better at defending against space units. The fact that it has 2 base attack means that when your opponent attacks into it, it's more likely to be a trade as opposed to them eating your space unit. So it's really good in that regard.
Yeah, and I think you meant A-Wing. So yeah, A-Wing's a 1/3, but it attacks for 3, so it's a little bit better if you want to have an aggressive start. But the Interceptor is better for those times when you don't have initiative. And I found myself, I think I maybe won like 2 die rolls the whole weekend for initiative. So like, it definitely helps a lot to have the 2/3 base, and then late game it's just a truck because you want to get to 15 damage on your base anyways, so you'll make up the damage later. It's like a better, like playing a A-Wing on turn 7 or 8 feels like really bad, but playing the Interceptor feels like, okay, this is like a legit threat that they have to answer.
And fun fact, if your base is at 13 or 14, you can activate Anakin to attack with Anakin's Interceptor at their base. You don't have to attack a unit when you activate Anakin. So if you want to get 2 extra damage on their base and you're at 13 or 14 damage on your base, you can activate Anakin to attack Anakin's Interceptor at their base, and now that your base has 15 plus damage on it, it'll attack for 2 more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just don't get the +2 unless you're attacking a unit. but in this
Exactly.
case, it pushes the health.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yeah.
let's keep going. We got a lot to get
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the Tiger team. The Tiger team is what you're gonna do on your 6 resource turn. So these are all the cards that are in the deck to specifically help around the Anakin flip turn. When you see the deck list next, I wanted to talk about a lot of the cards before we just stare at the full deck list. When you see the deck list next, you'll notice there are a lot of 3s and a lot of 6s, and the reason for that is I want to have the best flip turn possible. So the first thing for the flip turn, know what your opponent can do. We've already talked about why it's good to play Poe on R5. So if you have a Poe sitting there waiting, then that's great. But the thing before you flip is does your opponent play Overwhelming Barrage? Do they have a unit with 5 attack that would kill Anakin with a barrage? Are they playing Surprise Strike? Do they have a unit that would do that? Are they playing, try to think about what cards your opponent could reasonably have, because ideally you want to have options to play around them. So let's look at first at the defensive options. So we have a lot of good options here for defense. You have Perilous Position, which we talked about. So if your opponent's sitting there with a 4 attack unit and they're playing yellow and they're playing Surprise Strike, you can tap their 4 power unit down and they can't Surprise Strike your Anakin. You could also play the Village Protectors, a shielded Sentinel, and say, okay, it's going to take you multiple actions to get through this Sentinel, even if you have a lot of units. So that gives me time to flip and then play a second card if I wanted to play something offensive for Anakin. Obi-Wan is really good to just get in front of him, and then by the time they kill him, you can get your 2 experience on Anakin. Sometimes you just need to Rivals Fall their leader or their big unit to protect the flip. But all those defensive options are really great, and they lead into the attacking options. So my main attacking options are Jedi Lightsaber and Jedi Lightsaber. The reason it is on here twice is because you can put 2 of them on Anakin, and it's amazing. Bravado is another really good card. It only costs 3 if an enemy unit has died this turn, and you can ready any unit, including your Anakin with 1 lightsaber on him.
Now, we have to have killed the enemy unit, right, for Bravado? So,
it just says if the enemy unit is defeated.
Okay, that's a different.
I believe they have clarified that any enemy unit being defeated counts. So if an opponent has exploited an enemy unit, I believe that still counts.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, and same thing with like Palpatine Sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then just so players know, when you attack with the Jedi Lightsaber, if the unit dies, we still deal the overwhelm damage.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so that is why. That is why you start with 3 Jedi lightsabers in this deck. The fact that Anakin is a Force unit with Overwhelm and Heroic, so he can play Jedi lightsaber without an aspect penalty, that is the reason that this deck works. And Jedi lightsaber on attack giving -2/-2 is incredible. If the unit dies to the -2/-2, you still overwhelm the full damage on base. And if you have 2 Jedi lightsabers, the -2/-2 stacks, which leads me into what is our target customer for this Anakin attack. So, as an example, if your opponent plays a Village Protectors and you respond with a Jedi Lightsaber, it doesn't matter that Village Protectors has a shield. He dies to the on-attack trigger, whether he has a shield or not, and you still overwhelm the full damage to base. It is the interaction, it's the main interaction that makes this deck amazing. With 1 or 2 Jedi Lightsabers, you can clear the ground arena while also killing your opponent at the same time. It's not so much a race when you also get to kill all of their stuff. I played against the Mono Yellow Han, and I have 2 lightsabers on Anakin. I'm going to kill your Han leader, take 0 damage back because he got -4/-4, and deal 12 damage to your base.
And I see
all in the same action.
The previous slide you were talking about on this turn having a 6-drop or playing 2 3s. Mm-hmm. And here, if you've played a 3, then you got to deploy Anakin, you got to attack. You still have 3 left over for that Bravado.
Exactly. So if you're going all offense, if you don't have to worry about your opponent disrupting your turn, which obviously it depends on what deck you're playing against, it goes back to knowing what your opponent can do, then the ideal turn is either Anakin plus 2 lightsabers or Anakin plus 1 lightsaber plus Bravado. Either one are just devastating if your opponent can't interrupt it.
Did you do this in the tournament, Ian?
Oh yeah, I
okay,
did.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
So I mean, this was streamed. I was playing against Titanic from McCunkley Gaming in round 2 on Saturday, and I put 2 lightsabers on my Anakin after he tapped it down with a Ruthless Raider. And then he pretty much was in a position where if he ever didn't draw a tapper and then claim initiative immediately, he would just lose the game. Because I think I had like maybe 15 damage on his base and he's playing Tarkin Town. So just like one hit from Anakin is going to finish the game off. Other times it's like I was just, putting one lightsaber on Anakin and bravadoing. So like the math on this is if you're at 20 damage on your base and you have a lightsaber on Anakin, he's attacking for 10. So bravado makes that 20 damage in one turn. So
it's 11 if you
11,
have 20
yeah.
damage on your base and a lightsaber.
Sorry, yeah, you're right. So yeah,
Just
even more.
15.
I don't know. It's
Exactly.
ridiculous.
And I had a really good internal testing game where I was playing against a more aggressive deck and they were trying to race, and Anakin is really good at winning races. So I believe I went Anakin lightsaber. I attacked into his big unit, took a couple of damage back, but still had 11 health left on my Anakin. And then the next turn I said, okay, first action I attack you with Anakin for 14. And he says, wow, that's a big number. All right, I attack you. And I say, okay, I have bravado Anakin. Attack you for 14 again. And he said, oh, I guess I'll die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really silly if you can get all of the pieces to line up. Obviously, like your opponent is going to try to stop you from doing stuff, especially if they're good and kind of know what you're doing.
Mhm.
But the greatest part about this strategy is that it's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation, because
Mhm.
you don't have to deploy Anakin right away. Like you can just put your opponent in a position of you have impending doom. You don't know what's in my hand, and even if you do know what's in my hand and you know I have a lightsaber, like I'm going to put this guy out. He's going to have a bajillion health. He's going to have a bajillion power, and you have the answer of or the question of can you answer this giant threat? And because he has 7 health to start out, like there's not much in the game that can deal with that leader in one action. So the likelihood of you being able to play a lightsaber on him right away is really good. And even against those Django decks, like it if they tap it down with like a Ruthless Raid or whatever, you can still bravado him that turn and just untap him. Like
Mhm.
there's so many different ways to use bravado. It's not just a like a gimmicky like, oh, I'm gonna try to one shot kill you. There's a lot of really I think it's one of the best cards actually in our deck for the Sabine matchup, because
Mhm.
the
Oh,
Sabine
absolutely.
matchup really wants to go face and nickel and dime you with its damage, and if you can set up your flip turn to do 22 damage in one turn, well, that means that over the course of that game, when you're trying to nickel and dime and trade and not die, you just kind of have to do 3 damage, or they have to ping themselves 3 times, right? Like
Yeah.
there's
And to be clear, 22 damage is not this pipe dream 8-card combo. If you have one Jedi lightsaber and one bravado and 20 damage on your base, which Sabine is trying to do, or even 15 damage and a red 3 out, that's 22 damage on their base.
yeah. And sometimes like you don't even need to do it because they'll be forced to claim if you attack them,
Yeah.
because Anakin will just untap and kill them, right? I
Yeah.
had a game against a Han 2 ECL deck which played very similarly to Sabine ECL, where he was wreckering and poeing me, and he was doing a lot of damage to my base, and I got him to use his ECL on something early like a Village Protectors to like get it out of the way so that he could start doing more damage. I deploy Anakin safely and I attack him. I think he put me to 22 or something like that. And so Anakin attacked for 8. And then with the lightsaber, it was 11. So I attacked him for 11 and put him to, I don't know, like 14 or 15 or something like that. And he's just forced to claim because if I claim, I'm just going to. He has no way in his
Yeah.
deck to kill the Anakin.
Yeah, so it's not just bravado. It's just this guy is your Anakin's so strong at that point they have to claim.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's one of the nice things about bravado, because if you have 3 resources open and they say I have to claim to kill Anakin, you say, well, now that you've claimed, I play
You're still
bravado.
dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
play around the bravado and they say, okay, I'm gonna do this other action because I have to be prepared in case you have bravado, and then you just claim. And you say,
Yeah.
okay, well, now I have the first action to hit you for 11. So it changes the
Yep.
way your opponent playing around bravado versus playing around trying to kill Anakin first action on their turn. They have to play completely opposite. So they have to figure out what are they going to play around, and it's a really good opportunity to make your opponent play around the wrong thing, because they know that they know the threat of bravado is real. And so, do they respect it or do they not? And if they guess wrong, then you can win either way.
Well, let's see
I
the
also
list.
think that.
We've
Oh,
made them
sorry.
wait 35 minutes for this.
Yeah.
Let's go to that. Let's go to that. I know we love talking about Star Wars.
Well, I wanted to make sure to talk through some of the cards because otherwise we would
Yeah.
just be sitting here staring at the list, trying to talk about the cards at the same time. As we show the list, I want to say that cutting cards is really hard. So whenever you make changes, you're cutting good cards from this deck to put in other good cards. That's where we're at with set 3 Star Wars in general. This is the list that Ian ran on Saturday. So Ian, do you want to talk about any of the specifics from this?
And we'll put
Yeah,
these links
so-
in the description. So don't stress over
Yeah.
parsing out this list.
Don't stress over copying
Yeah,
down the
we'll give it
the
to you.
picture.
We'll give it to you. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, so this was basically I took Jeff's original list from our internal testing practice, and I kind of tweaked it a little bit. I believe Jeff was playing R2, the one cost from set 1. I wanted to play Sabine unit as just because I knew that there was going to be at least one competent Han yellow player at the event, and I wanted more units that attacked for 3 so that I had more answers to DJ and Tech by using Anakin to attack for 5.
Yeah, and I like that change a lot. I think that change is correct in general for the deck, which we'll get to in some of the future slides as to why. I think
Yeah,
that.
and so Sabine unit was like a big addition that I made. I don't know if you also were running Cassians, but maybe it was
I
just
was
the number
on
of.
the fence about it, but I do really like it. I think it should be running Cassians. It's tough between things like Cassian and K2, because most of my versions are on a couple of K2s.
Yeah,
I think I like the couple of Cassians better, but a lot of that is a meta call. Do you want a 3 power unit or a 4 power unit? Do you need the ability to come in ready? Do you need the ability to play him on turn 2? All that depends on what you expect to play against.
yeah. So the theory on the Cassian was that if my opponent starts their turn, so like if they go like Tech on the 4 resource turn, and then claim, hoping that they can like turn 1 DJ me or something like that. I can get the Cassian out so that they don't have that option anymore. I think one time in testing against Han, he tried to do the he didn't do Tech DJ because you wouldn't have enough resources to smuggle out the Cassian to attack. But it was on the 5 resource turn. I think he already had a Tech out, and I had first action. So what I did was I just smuggled the Cassian out right away because now they can't DJ. If they do, they just lose the DJ. I get my resource back. And now I'm also threatening their Tech. So now they have to like kind of answer the Cassian right away. So they have to like waylay it or cunning it, and now they're not going to Tech DJ me. So it was just kind of more insulation against DJing, because as a 6 deploy leader, that is probably one of the things you have to worry about the most is like against the Han deck, can you actually deploy your leader, or are they going to always DJ you? Which like they're pretty consistent at DJing you, but you have really good tools to disrupt that through your units and through perilous position.
Yeah, the main games that I lost in testing with this deck were when I was playing against Mono Han and just never got to deploy because I got DJ'd every turn.
Yeah. And then I think the only other like major change was I think you had like a couple redemptions. It might have just been one. I found that in testing, even against the Django decks, that if you relying on the redemption to like heal you 8 and have like a 6 power unit that has 1 health left really wasn't doing the job. And it's kind of anti-synergy with Anakin wanting to have a lot of attack.
Yeah, for sure.
So there was some like awkwards there. I think redemption could still be an option going forward, but I just love the forces with me, and I really wanted to try it out in the deck. I had not played a single game with it yet, and I was just like, this is my fun of one of. No one can get me off of it. We're locking it in.
So did you guys work together to figure out how to modify it against Django? Did you guys meet up and talk about that?
Yeah, for a bit, yeah.
We had I called Ian. We had a call looking through his Saturday list before Sunday about what options we could do to make the deck better against Jango. We all expected Jango Red to be there. I don't think we expected it to be 40% of the field or whatever it was. So that leads us into the Sunday Fun Day Beat Django Edition, where you can see some of the changes. The forces with me got cut, and there's a Mystic Reflection in there as another -2/-2. We've got one Anakin's Interceptor. I believe, Ian, you said you would have done more, but you only had one copy with you.
Yeah, I only had one with me. Well, basically what it was is I just brought my deck with me, and I was just gonna jam it both days. And my buddy Chris brought like a playset of everything, but he
Oh,
didn't bring
nice.
two playsets of everything. So I let him play the however many interceptors he wanted to,
Nice.
and I just got the leftovers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like the interceptors, I think were definitely a key takeaway. We kind of realized that A-Wing was not great in the meta. If Django isn't everywhere and there's not a lot of 3/2s in space, then I think it's fine to play the A-Wing.
Yeah.
And then we moved the Ether Sprites main instead of the Bravados. So it's not that this isn't Johnny Bravado. This is still Johnny Bravado, but it's Johnny Bravado against specific decks.
Yeah, and it
like-
hurt my heart a little bit to take out the Bravado, but you have to. I think the Aether Sprites are so good against Django that if that's the main deck you expect to see, then I think you have to put them in.
Yeah, I mean, Ether Sprite just overperformed for me that weekend.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
was such a
absolutely.
good card. The fact that it on play just deals with a 3/2 spaceship and then is a giant threat to just kill two things every turn in space,
Yeah.
is just so disgusting. And the Bravados are really good against certain matchups, but Django, because it doesn't have a lot of ground units, the lightsaber like overwhelm into a unit and then Bravado it play doesn't really work very often. And also the tap effect from the Django deck can also kind of work against you in terms of always hitting with Anakin.
Yeah.
Usually you'll end up winning by attacking with Anakin, but it's like you kind of have to fight through all of their tap effects first.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like the Bravado. I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. The Bravado would be really good against a not great Django player. If they don't understand that they need to keep holding the tap up and understand all those interactions, then it can work really well. But I think when you're playing against the Titanics and the John Tadas of the world, like they're going to understand these interactions, and you're not going to be able to surprise them as easily with stuff like this.
Yeah, I can see paying 3 to ready your unit against a leader that can tap so easily or exhaust so easily. It's not
Exactly.
A strong main
It
deck
becomes
card.
a cat and mouse game, right?
Yeah.
Of do they have another tap effect, or can I get away with this?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially
it's
because like there's
tricky.
often times where the Django is going to stay on the field for a bit.
Mhm.
I mean, usually, like, the real goal that I try to do against the Django deck is that you try to defeat the Django on the first action of the 6 resource turn, so that the turn that you deploy Anakin, they can't use the tap effect. Because if he is defeated that phase, he goes back to the
Right.
leader deployment area tapped.
Yeah.
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 I
All right.
believe that goes into the next slide, which is standard best practices specifically against Django Red. So we've already talked through a lot of this, but the Jango Red deck has a lot of space and a lot of ways to tap your units on the ground. It has a lot of surprise damage between Triple Dark Raid, a lot of tough to kill units, whether it's Lurking Tie, 7th Fleet Defender. So I want to go through why I think this deck has a very good Django matchup, especially if you're running the Aether Sprites main. Step 1 is we want to deal 2 damage and -2/-2 a lot. So obviously specific lists vary, but if we look at the list that won the 2K on Saturday, it had 21 units with 2 or less health. Each of those units dies to a perilous position. Each of those units dies to Mystic Reflection if that's in our deck. And outside of the Lurking Tie or Shields, they all die to Obi-Wan's Aether Sprite Ping, Poe Dameron Discard, which can cross arenas, Daring Raid. This deck has a lot of ways to deal 2 damage and a lot of ways to give -2/-2, which I think helps a lot in that matchup.
Yeah, the Mystic Reflection day 2 helped a lot. I used it against John Tata to kill, I believe, a Lurking Tie, or maybe it was the 7th Fleet Defender. I don't know. It was something that 2 damage wouldn't have normally killed. And because it was -2/-2, it ended up being like really disgusting. Because I think it was like on the 5 resource turn, I played Yoda and then forced through him. Oh, actually, no. This was a really cool turn. I have to talk about this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, do it.
So we enter the 5 resource turn. He has a Bazine out, an ISB agent, and that's it. And I have initiative, and I just go pass. And so he just like kind of looks at me, and like in my hand I have Yoda, Force Throw, and Mystic Reflection, and I want to play this Yoda, and I want to Force Throw and Mystic Reflection, but I don't want to play it into any sort of removal that he might have. Um, and I also wanted the Django out so that when I Force Throw him, I can put the damage onto the Django, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just pass, and he kind of like looks at me, and he goes, oh, "That's a little awkward." I'm like, "Yeah." And then he was like, all right, I'll attack. And I'm like, all right, pass. And then he's like, I'll deploy Django. All right, pass. And he attacks with the ISB agent, pass. And then he attacks with Django finally. And he like the whole time he's just like, man, you're making this so awkward for me. Like,
Yeah, he's like, what are you holding back? What are you expecting? Like, what are you waiting for? Is probably what he's thinking.
well, the big thing is like the way that this Django works is that they're a reactive deck, right?
Mhm.
Like their whole game plan is that they want to play units to or like triple dark raid to get units that
Mhm.
will do damage to your units and tap them. And I didn't have any units out. So it was just like I had an empty board. He couldn't interact with me at all because I'm not doing anything. And there's no reason for him to claim when I pass because he has a board full of units that need to attack and he hasn't used any of his mana. And I'm just taking 5 damage from his 3 units. I also had my sideboard bombing run in my hand, so I was trying to like set up this bombing run for the following
Nice.
turn
Yeah.
where I could kill the Django and the 2/1/3s. But I knew I wanted to like get this Yoda out with no damage so that there's like higher chance that it lives and I can use both of my cards that require force activation, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up playing the Yoda. He plays like a Kylo's Lurking Tie, and then I force throw him, which is funny because he played the card that he should have kept in hand if I was force throwing him, because he would have then discarded the Kylo's Tie and then been able to play it.
Oh yeah.
But so I force throw him, and then he like pitches something. I put 2 damage onto the Django, and then I Mystic Reflection, I think the 3/2, and then we go to the next turn. He doesn't even have like another 3-drop to play, and then I'm like kind of set up to like attack. I don't end up using the bombing run, but it was just like a really interesting turn against like the way that like the Django deck wants to act. Like you have so many tools in your deck to be able to stop them from what they're doing and make their turns awkward. And a lot of times it's just kind of, if you force them to use their resources before they want to use them, it's going to be really beneficial for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the second key is restore. So a lot of times the way I've seen this Django deck win is they play a few spaceships and then they just control that arena. But if you have, even if it's Queel Restore 1, Yoda Restore 2, Razor Crest Restore 2, you get so much health back that it helps you avoid these spots where, oh, I'm dead to Fire Spray, oh, I'm dead to Triple Dark Raid into Ruthless Raider. That's where I think the Django deck really flourishes, is where they get you in this point where they say, you're 1 card away. If I have the right card here, then you're going to die, and you have to constantly play around that. And we have a really good way to stop that between the damage on board and also just our restore to keep our health total at a reasonable level.
Yeah. Restored Arc 2 is another like MVP of the deck.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
The Restore 1 on Restored Arc has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like being able to trade with one of their units and heal 1 at the same time is just, it's gross. I felt pretty good in the matchup every time I saw Yoda, every time I saw a Razor Crest. Like those cards were just so good, especially like the Razor Crest is good, and then if you also had a perilous position, it's just like, all right, you have this locked up. It felt like
if their turn 3, for example, is a Lurking TIE Phantom, and your turn 3 is perilous position it. Their turn 4 is play another spaceship. Your turn 4 is play a bigger spaceship and get the perilous position back. Like that's really good.
Yeah.
And then step 3 is hit with Anakin. So some of the keys to hit with Anakin are, like Ian was saying, if you can kill Django before you flip Anakin, be it Rival's Fall, be it attacking in with a large unit into Django, he can't tap your leader that turn, because when he goes back to the leader side, he goes back exhausted. So if you kill Django on your flip turn, they have to have exactly no good to me dead to be able to tap your Anakin down. And this is where you can also utilize initiative and bravado if you're playing that, depending on who you're playing against, to say, okay, I'm gonna claim here because you can't kill the 10 health on my Anakin, and I'm gonna get to attack next turn. Or I'm gonna make you claim because you think you have to tap him down first action, and I'm gonna play bravado, untap him, and hit you for 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
Is a
that's
big
that's
number.
pretty much the key to success against the
Mhm.
deck.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting. The 6 flip turn is so interesting because especially when you're playing someone who knows what's going on. A lot of
Yeah.
times what they want to do is like they played a triple dark raid early, they got a ruthless raider out, they have the ruthless raider, they want to have you flip and then they ruthless raider and ping Anakin and tap it. Like that's their whole goal for that turn.
Mhm.
And I don't want to see ruthless raider at all. So a lot of times what you want to do is set up so that they either have to use their resources and don't have 6 available to ruthless raider, or you hostage their resources so that they have to pass at any point. And if
Yeah.
they ever pass, you just claim and you just delay the flip. It's fine. They didn't use
Mhm.
their resources, and you get to move on to the next turn and do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
A lot of times it involves like attacking with a Poe. A lot of times it's like, let me put out some perilous position to try to finish off a Django, take down the Django, something like that.
Mhm.
It could just be like play um, the village protectors and then see what they do after you do that, and kind of like attack with units that you have out already, like really force them to have no actions left before
Mhm.
they try to ruthless raider your Anakin.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what about other decks? We're at the 50-minute mark, so I think we've lost most people's attention. The people that are hardcore, they want to
Fair.
learn everything about this leader. We still have those folks.
Oh yeah.
But I know our next slide we're going to talk about Han Yellow. Let's get into some of these other matchups and
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah. So this one, the main thing Han Yellow wants to do is accelerate out into large things, abuse resources and smuggling, play DJ to steal all your resources for either 5 or 7. So it's very critical to have a 3+ attack ground unit. These plus Anakin ability can kill attack and can kill a DJ. We've already talked about that a bit, so I won't go into it too much. But it's basically a math problem of, do I have a 3? Do they have a 5? I get to kill their 5.
Yeah.
The main thing that we haven't talked about as much is you want to have a plan for Han flip. The 2 main plans you can have are perilous position in hand, or a 4 power unit on board, or a 3 power unit with red 3. Either way, a way to attack for 6 with Anakin's leader ability, so that you're just sitting there holding that card hostage. Because if they have to play a waylay or a cunning to tap your guy or anything, then you're not getting DJ'd that turn because they've spent their resources to make sure their Han leader doesn't die. And then the third key, if they have 7 open resources and you have 6, don't get DJ'd. Don't do it.
Just flip.
Just flip.
Yeah. That's in general. That's every leader. Just about.
Yeah, yeah. If you're sitting there, if your leader can flip and you're against Mono Han with 7 resources open, just flip your leader. If they kill it, then they're not DJing you, and if they DJ you, they're just getting 10 more damage ahead, and you still have the same problem next turn.
Yep.
So after this, I wanted to go into some a little bit more generic talk about any aggro or mid-range deck. These are the decks that this deck wants to feast on. So you want to use your health as a resource without getting too low. You have Anakin ability, you have a lot of restore. You need to understand what your opponent's doing and use Anakin ability as required. If they're kind of trying to take control of the game and play big units, then you can say, okay, I'm gonna use Anakin's ability more aggressively to kill your big units. If they are just attacking face, then you can say, okay, I'm not gonna use Anakin's ability as much. I'm gonna rely on my restore units, and I'm gonna use a large Anakin flip to win. So a lot of this comes into kind of just a math problem of, okay, how much damage does Anakin do now? You're sitting here adding up the number of times I've taken 30 seconds on a turn to make sure that the numbers added up correctly. It's like, wait, 1 + 2 + 1 + 1, and then I've got the red 3, and I've got a bravado and 1 lightsaber, and that's lethal if I do that. And so you
Yeah.
just got to go through and make sure that the numbers all add up with. And another key here also is, if you are an Anakin flip turn, sometimes I flip before I attack with my restore unit because I want to be above that 5-point threshold, and then attack with Anakin, then attack with my restore unit to make sure that I get in the most damage I can. But that's all situational with what your opponent can do to disrupt you.
The other thing that you can do. Oh, sorry, Jonathan. You go ahead.
A lot of new pilots, I think, are going to be scared to use the Anakin ability in the aggressive matchup. They're scared to kill themselves.
Well, I mean, if you think about it the other way, if you use Anakin's ability to trade up into a 3-power unit, you've spent 2 life to take 3 power off the board, which is a net 1 gain if that was going to attack you this turn.
Yep.
So Anakin's ability, even though it costs you life, can overall save you life even the same turn that you do it. So
Yeah,
a lot of
it's
times
kind of
you've
like
just got to
the
bite
whole
the bullet.
concept behind ECL, right? Like you have 5 less health, but you're ambushing a unit out to not take damage for a turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
If you
maybe
ECL
2 turns,
out
right,
a
if it goes
6-power
unabated.
and kill a 6-power unit, then ECL has more than paid for itself because you would have taken 6 damage from that unit at least. I mean, that's obviously a vague generalization, but for the most part, you can use that kind of logic to justify using this Anakin ability even in aggressive matchups where you need to trade up.
Yeah. And I will say, if you're a sicko like me, you will do some weird things where you will soft pass and use Anakin's ability.
Yeah.
Without attacking with the unit.
Yeah, exactly. It's a way to, if you're worried about them claiming and you say, oh, I don't want to do anything, but if they pass, I want to claim. So yeah, just use Anakin's ability with no unit to attack with, take 2 damage to your base as a soft pass.
Yeah.
And especially if they're taking the controlling position in the game, then that's totally fine. Sometimes you need to do that to get damage on your base above a certain threshold. If you watch the late night gaming versus McClunky show match that recently happened, I believe Dark from McClunky Gaming masterfully negotiated around Anakin by making sure that his opponent was always right below 5 damage on base until he could kill Anakin leader, and he would hide behind a 4 or 5 Sentinel and make sure that he did not turn Anakin into a 5-power unit. It was really well done.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the name of the game. It's like I just side note, highly recommend if you play this deck, use dice to represent your base totals and use it in five pieces, because then you can just count how many 5s there are, and that's how much extra damage Anakin has. That way you're not like, I'm at 17. How much damage is that? It's a lot easier when you can just count the 5s. Highly recommend that. But yeah, like there's so many little interactions that you can do to kind of manipulate your life total with this deck. I think it's really hard for the aggro player to know what to do. Like, I think it's
you're
easier
putting
for
them in a real bind because they want to be putting damage on your base, but they know that that's putting them in even more danger when they do that. So
yeah, they almost have to like chunk the last 10 damage or 12 damage to your base, because if they put you above a certain threshold, like Anakin's just gonna kill them, and if you have the bravado, they're just dead, and if not, they have to claim because you just have one action to kill them again. So yeah, I mean it's.
So let's wrap this up. Let's talk about control real quick, and then there were more questions. I think there's a lot more to get into about this deck, and if people love this content, they're excited to talk more about the deck, we'll do some follow up. We'll talk about other colors. We'll talk about other blue cards. Like what other considerations are there in this deck? But let's go ahead and you've got this control slide. Let's go over that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so control is always going to be a tough matchup for this kind of deck. And it depends on the flavor of control too. Palpatine wants to steal your units versus something like a blue Iden that just wants to nuke the board constantly. I think the biggest thing is to get in damage where you can. In the early turns, whenever you have an opportunity, attack their base. You need to make it so that in the later turns, they're not just stabilizing and saying, okay, I'm free. They're stabilizing and saying, well, I'm still 1 attack or 1 unit or one good turn away from being dead. Out of the sideboard, you get to bring in your extra late game threats. And the big thing is to know what you can afford to play around. And that's a really tough thing to judge. But knowing on the 5 and 6 resource turn, how ahead or behind are you? How much damage have you gotten on their base? Can you afford to play around them having a rival's fall, or do you just have to make them have it because you're so far behind that if they have it, you've lost anyway, and you need to make them have it to get some damage on base? So knowing what you can afford to play around is really key in the control matchups. You want to try to get in at least one Anakin hit. It may sound obvious, but if you can make them spend resources on something else on a turn, like Ian was talking about delaying your flip for a turn potentially, whatever you can do to try to get in one Anakin hit. And then the other aspect is to control their hand. We have Force Throws main. Pillages are in the sideboard. Some builds have K2. It depends on exactly what you're teching for in the meta. But if you can attack their hand and make it less likely that they have the exact right answer, or that they have to top deck the answer, they can't afford to just hold it in their hand for 3 or 4 turns, then you can make it a lot more likely that you can scrape out the win.
Yeah, I will say that Palpatine, it's I think the worst matchup in terms of what they can do against our game plan.
Yeah.
Because the alternate units that we have, like Luke's and Poe's and stuff, they can steal to try to get an advantage against you. And then in the post board, if they're smart and they know that you're bringing in crate dragons, they just never flip Palp until you deploy a crate dragon, and now the crate dragon is just kind of rotting in your hand.
It goes back to trying to get in damage where you can, because if they're at the point where they've taken enough damage, then they can't afford to let a Luke sit around, even if they know you might have crate in your hand. And what I try to do against Palp is just dangle the thing you want them to steal. Oh, here's a K2. That's pretty, like, it's not appealing to steal, but if they keep getting hit by it and know that it can deal an extra 3 damage anyway, then they may have to steal the K2 eventually, and then you can drop your loot crate. Or maybe they really want to steal that Obi-Wan because they want a Sentinel. You say, well, now that you have an Obi-Wan, I'm going to drop this Luke, drop this crate, whatever. And so it's really a mind game, and goes back to a lot of the caliber of player you're playing against. How well do they know your deck and your game plan?
A lot of these lines you guys are talking about, they're not even Anakin specific. This is the same things we were battling.
Exactly.
Playing the Rey deck last set. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that like more Iden blue like mill control decks, I think you have a better chance against than like a green villain deck, just because like Barrage is always going to be really good against you, especially if you try to do like a space aggro game plan against them. But like against like double blue Iden, I think my buddy Chris played against that in one of the days, and he played tech in the sideboard. I ended up playing tech in the sideboard on the 3rd day, and he like played a tech and then paid like, I don't know, 11 mana for a crate dragon. And then they I think they super laser blasted, took 8 to the face, and then he claimed, and then the following turn he did the exact same play, tech from resources, crate dragon from resources. Nice. Or something. That's like hilarious. That. It was gross, and he ended up winning that game. But I also think against those decks, if they don't have the Rivals Fall, you have a small window where I think you can try to kill them with the Bravado, like one hit, try to kill them in one turn combo.
Yeah,
and
against
those decks specifically, not like a green deck that might have more units, like a Kira green or a Palp green. You can just activate Anakin every single turn, so that when you do deploy him, you do have damage on your base, so that he does some amount of damage. Because if he's just 4 power, he's not going to be doing a lot.
And that's where I think the pillages and force throws can come in too, because if you do those before flip and make it so they're out or very low on cards in hand, and if you force throw their last card right before you flip, hey, look at that. They probably don't have a Rival's Fall if they don't have any cards in their hand.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so your last couple slides, we're getting into other colors. I think we can save that for another time.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of my takeaway here.
Stuff that was in the blue slides anyway. So.
Yeah, from the perspective of somebody considering this deck, considering piling this deck, I think you can lean a lot on, if you've played Rey Red in the previous set, if you've played these blue red heroic decks before, you've got a lot of the same play patterns. So you've got this new leader to learn about. You've got the flip to learn about, the front side to learn about, and a little bit different deck design, but a lot of similarity there. So I think
a lot of similarities, but I think there's one big difference And it goes back to what I said on, I think, the first slide, which is what if Han 2 killed you in 2 attacks? The big difference
Right.
between this deck and Ray is that Ray wants to close with Crate Dragon, and you want to close with your leader. So a big difference here can be trying to get damage in early and trying to make sure you have a good flip turn. Like Ray uses her leader to not die. We use our leader to kill the opponent, and I think that's a key difference when you're thinking in the mentality of what do I play, what do I resource, how do I handle turns 3 and 4 and things like that.
Yeah, what I'm saying is a lot of what you guys have talked about in this overview is still not specific to Anakin.
Oh, absolutely.
A good bit of it. So
Yeah.
Players that are interested in the deck, they can lean on a lot of their experience and just learn about how do I adapt my play style to using this leader in this deck.
Yeah, exactly. I think the adaptation is the key word, where it's not picking up a whole new thing. It's just learning the key differences.
Yep.
And a lot of it is going to be similar for sure.
All right.
I think I played maybe like 15 to 20 testing games before the weekend with the deck. Like, I didn't play that much of it. I've played blue hero decks before,
Right.
and blue red hero decks before, and honestly, watching Jeff play, I learned more than me playing myself, which was like super helpful that I had that as a resource. But like, yeah, I mean, just try the deck out. Do some of the lines that we had talked about, set up your flip turn, and see what happens, and just try to learn from your testing when you're like playing, at your locals or something. Just like see what you can do against these random decks that you're going to face at locals. And if you don't like the deck because you can't figure out how to bravado someone at the right time, or they keep killing your Anakin on the flip turn or something like that, just maybe look at different tools that you could play to help protect your flip turn, or things like that.
Yeah,
you can always come to our Discord. We're all there. We're all active. You can ask questions if you take on this deck and you want to talk to Ian, talk to Jeff, just ask the group in general. Hey, Ian was just talking about, my leader keeps getting killed. What can I do? We're happy to have conversation about stuff like that.
100%.
So Jeff, any closing remarks before we sign off from you?
I mean, main closing remark is thanks for doing this, both Ian and Jonathan. I'm really happy Ian did well with the deck. I'm really happy that the deck did well by itself too. I've just been loving this and really happy for the opportunity to show it to everybody. I've been really happy with also the amount of the number of questions that we've gotten for a video like this. So I love seeing the interest from the community in this deck, and hopefully it keeps up the momentum over the next few big events now that people know it exists.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.